If you're not focusing on human first and you're focusing on a KPI of how many dials the person made every day, it's going to be a long, tough, brutal road, and a lot of people are going to leave you.
Miguel Guerrero is Global Head of Business Development at Orbital, a company that automates property due diligence and risk management for law firms, conveyancers, and insurers. Before this, he was Head of Sales Development at Synthesia, the AI video generation platform. Today, we're talking about what changes when you move from selling visually obvious AI products to selling workflow transformation in unglamorous industries, and how you build repeatable pipeline when you're asking buyers to replace decades of manual process across completely different customer types. This is Are You Getting More? Miguel, thank you so much for joining us.
Very much appreciated, guys.
Now, you went from Synthesia, which was riding the AI hype wave with video generation, to Orbital, which is using AI to solve property diligence, a space that most people find pretty dry. What made you take that leap, and what did you see in property tech that other people might miss?
Appreciate the question. Asked it a lot because Synthesia was all about virality, right? And I think a lot of us operate in video format, personal and professional lives. And I think as AI is developing, the intriguing thing for me is we're all looking at this agentic AI solution and what that means. And I'm curious where empathy doesn't play so much of a role, what that means long term. So when I saw a space like healthcare or a space like legal services, and I personally think it's a beautiful spot to be disturbed, right? A lot of antiquated, ancient kind of manual processes. So the ability to enable and support those teams, not necessarily replace, but just speed up capacity, risk mitigation. Those things were just intriguing at the moment. So I was always asking for your lawyer, your partner, your attorney, are we really focused on best friends? Are we focused on that kind of relationship? Or do we want efficiency? Do we want accuracy? Do we want speed? That kind of thing. So at a high level, that's probably one of the things that intrigued me making the switch over.
Awesome. Now, you've been head of sales development at Synthesia and now global head of business development at Orbital. That's a meaningful title shift. How has your scope and thinking changed between leading SDRs versus owning the entire business development function?
The initial conversation in Synthesia was how to break into the US market on the go-to-market team. With brand awareness in the UK environment, how do you bring the new messaging to the new persona, the new culture in the US? So understanding that, but also being a part of kind of the UK movement as well, I was able to take both of those learnings and shift into the Orbital environment now. Understanding that the conversation is different, the messaging is different, the way we approach business is culturally different. So I think there was a good foundation of concepts and approaches, good and bad, failures and successes that I took from Synthesia and brought to Orbital to kind of get it off the ground.
At Synthesia, I know we're going back and forth a lot, but at Synthesia, you were selling AI video creation, which is something that people can demo and immediately get their head around. At Orbital, you're selling property diligence automation to lawyers and conveyancers. How did you have to rethink your approach to pipeline generation when the problem that you're solving is less visually obvious?
It's a great question. So when I joined Synthesia, it was an inbound engine. Nobody picked up the phone. Nobody went outbound. There was no need to because of the shiny toy that is kind of video. So the inbound engine was incredible. The concept there was really like, how do we go to market? How do we find people where they're at and build the value proposition in that format? As opposed to, like you mentioned, the less trendy, less beautiful kind of space of legal tech where we're 85% outbound. And I know everyone's always trying to think of how to automate and scale and create these incredible processes. 86% of our opportunities are off the phone. People having valuable conversations with research, with intent, with good kind of targeted approaches to people that frankly are billing by the hour, right? So the amount of objections we've gotten over the 5 minutes wasted and what that actually costs them, I think is important. But I think for us in that process was, all right, so how do we create almost this all bound movement, right? So if I'm continuously going outbound, now how does marketing, events, inbound, brand awareness, website, LinkedIn, email, how do they all assist the outbound movement as opposed to Synthesia? It was just a different environment. We were just fielding so many inbounds from the actual users. Here, we're trying to meet a higher level conversation with the partner. What is the actual value outside of the using of the physical platform?
Now, you've got 16 years in sales leadership and you're active in communities like Rep Genius and SDR leaders. What's the most common mistake you see sales leaders make when they're trying to scale from their first few deals to repeatable pipeline?
16 years, Lisa. That's why there's not a follicle left on my head. Good old sales development. Listen, I think we make a lot of mistakes. I think, first of all, we think that we can break through the noise. We think we have the incredible value proposition. We think we can be faster and quicker to market on email format. I think we get away a little bit from the actual phone call, the actual uncomfortableness of conversations. I think we empower people at first, and when we ramp them, are we continuously making them uncomfortable? Are we pushing curiosity? And I think one of the things I try to focus on as much as I can with the teams that I build is I'm not above the fray. I am not one of the good or bad managers I've had as my upbringing in sales has come, where I'm screaming at KPIs or activity. But are you pushing yourself to be better? Are you holding yourself accountable? So I think there's a level of process, there's a level of enablement, continuously being uncomfortable. And as you can imagine in sales development or business development in itself, the ability to pivot, fall on your face, pivot, adjust, because whatever works for the last 2 weeks probably won't be working long term. So continuously kind of push different narratives, different personas, staying creative as much as we try to.
Beautiful.
We've spoken about the kind of prospects that Orbital sells to. And within that range, conveyancers, insurers, in-house legal are many different buyer personas. How do you think about structuring your business development approach when you have so many distinct customer types? And if you tried to treat them all the same, what would break?
Yeah, I think to answer the last part, it's very clear very quickly. If you go to market with generic messaging, if you think there's 2 or 3 value props that you provide to a certain persona and you try to create the overarching generalization, you will fail, right? It's going to become more of a numbers game. You're going to burn a lot of opportunities, conversations, potential relationships. So I think really identifying what is the ICP, where do we win, right? And I think it goes back to this fundamental where every company is an AI company now. We're all AI companies. And I personally think long term, those that really learn, earn, and really focus on one single domain specifically, right, where we focus on real estate, will be successful in the long term. It's really difficult to be the master of all. So I think in those personas, really breaking down, one of the beautiful things we have internally here is former real estate practicing attorneys, part of our team, right? So it's not a cool product that the product and R&D team are building and hoping someone buys or finds advantages or value in. It's actual personas that we are chasing are now on the team. So they can tell us that's valuable, that doesn't matter, that's irrelevant, or what are the conversations to have. So I think that helps our enablement internally too, right? It's not just me coaching. This is the actual persona that we're chasing. Let's have a conversation and see what are the 4 or 5 trigger conversations, value props that they care about outside of the flashy toy that is AI right now.
Miguel, you mentioned on your LinkedIn profile, lead from the mud. That's a very specific philosophy that I've never heard anyone say before. Where did that come from, and how does it actually show up in how you build and run your teams?
Yeah, I'm asked that often. And when I was 22, a billion years ago, my BDRing experience, SDRing experience was door to door, floor to floor in Manhattan, selling business supplies to people that had business supplies. And I often was kicked out the door at 8 a.m. and told not to come back till 5 p.m. and just to get out there and make it happen. And I always found the people that were sitting behind the desks really trying to dictate what's success, what's not success, but you never saw those people walk out of the office and join you knocking on doors. So long term, as I built several teams, and I've been in AE, a BDR, and led both, I have a profound respect for the actual grind. I don't take it lightly. And as I get further in age, I want to stay closer in dynamic. So what are we doing daily? I'm not above it, right? If we're making calls, then when I join a company, I need to make calls. If I'm asking you to book a meeting on an email, I need to be booking meetings on email. If I'm doing the extra enablement or product enablement, if I'm asking questions, if I come in early, then let's all come in early. If I stay late, let's all stay in late. So I don't think the further you get in role, title, experience, you should be even that much closer. Otherwise, how can I coach on it? How can I enable on it? And frankly, if I'm 21, 22 and I'm entering the workforce, why would you respect what I'm saying as valid? So yeah, I think it was early tainted PTSD experience that kind of yielded the approach.
Looking at Orbital's product suite, Copilot, Witness, Residential, you're essentially automating a process that's been manual paperwork for decades. How do you generate demand when you're asking buyers to fundamentally change what they're comfortable with, the way that they've always worked?
I think often when we reach out to people, right, the response we get is That's what we do. Why would we need your service, your product, or your platform? That's what we've done, and that's what we do for 20 years. There's kind of a lack there maybe of understanding initially, and probably for whatever reason. But I do think the interesting piece is we all want to do more business year on year, right? And the hardest thing to do is hire good human beings, ramp them, make them efficient, and put them at capacity, right? So when we look at law firms, when we look at all those kinds of suites of products, I say, if I can 10x the capacity of your current teams that you trust with your projects, right? If your current workload takes an average of 5 to 10 business days, and I could drop that by 70% and accelerate that process, what does that look like for your bottom line year on year without adding a single headcount, right? And the speed of this not only matters in that sense, but the risk mitigation aspect, right? Another set of eyes, so to speak, on what you're doing on a daily basis. That is 200, 300, 400 pages, right? And we are humans and we make errors. And I think one of the concerns always is, if I'm not sure about the accuracy or the efficiency of AI. Absolutely. And that's why it's considered kind of this human in the loop approach, right? Whether it's the partner and the associate and the paralegal with the platform assisting you to be able to kind of see what are the red lines. Let me make sure this is great. Is it a deliverable that can go to a client? But if I'm taking apart all of that and really breaking it down, the ability to really increase deal velocity, mitigate risk long-term, and create more efficiencies in supporting your team, not replacing your team. It's just really taking what I find to be almost 200 years old in process and speeding it up. And I think one of the interesting pieces that we see all the time, right, is we have these almost Lord of the Rings scrolls when it comes to lease abstractions and title and surveys that people are still operating on in the US and the UK and some of the biggest law firms in the world. And we digitize that simple thing. And the difference that makes on lift, on just being able to digest that, is ridiculous. So I think that's kind of one of the interesting pieces.
In Chile, they rely very heavily, as is true in many Latin American countries, on their notarias. And many of them, like I even remember when I went down to get our title document, this is a total sideline, when I went to get the title document for our land, and it's like you go to an office, you take a number, you give them the thing, and then they've got like some 85-year-old dude who goes and he starts pulling folders off of things and flipping through it.
And always with the stamps.
But the notarias, we discovered when they started switching to digital content, like digital signatures, and then having stuff available digitally, that their businesses took off. And the notarias who were still stuck on the papers, they started to fall off. So a lot of these solutions, while there is resistance because we've been doing it a certain way, like if they don't evolve, they will go extinct.
Agreed.
You've now been at Orbital for 7 months after nearly 2 years at Synthesia. What's one thing you had to unlearn or rebuild from scratch when you made your move? What assumption from your previous role just didn't transfer?
Great question. And it's funny when you say 7, 8 months in startup world, it feels like 38 years. It's funny how fast things move when it comes to accelerating. I guess the biggest piece to unlearn is I moved from a flashy product. I moved from a lot of wow moments without really having to build incredible value up front, right? I can send you a clip and it's automatically like, these are talking avatars and they look like humans and they show emotions. Like, yeah, let's have a conversation. And now I'm moving towards partners that are making millions of dollars for their firms, to frankly don't have 3 seconds to give you, don't really operate on the day-to-day. They're not the user of the platform. And now I have to go back to, knocking on doors. How do I build value in 30 seconds? How do I show you that there's a reason I'm reaching out to you and it's worth your time? And how can I really build more revenue? How can I really increase what you're doing on a daily basis? How can I show that efficiency without coming off salesy, without using all this crazy jargon, right? And then I'm not going to pretend like I had the legal background. So how do I learn legalese? How do I really bring that vernacular and speak to the customer where they are? So I had to make sure to kind of scrap the entire thought process and approach and kind of go back to the basics.
Now, with pretty much everything, the more sophisticated your business development gets, the more that you start to see where the real friction lives in the system. So now that you've built out your initial motion at Orbital, what's the thing that has been exposed, the constraint that you're most focused on removing, and that would materially change your growth trajectory if you could solve it?
I think it's a conversation we're having now entering 2026, right? So when you get to this fork in the road, so to speak, we're trying to close Series B pretty soon, and it's a motion of the outbound versus the marketing, right? And you speak to any sales development leader globally, they're going to tell you there comes a point where we all got to create pipeline and it's almost like a push and pull as opposed to moving in the same direction. So I think the conversation, like I mentioned a little bit earlier, was stopping and saying, okay, what worked in 2018 and 2019 and throwing bodies at a problem, is that still what works in 2026? Is there another way where I can find intent data, where I can create this multi-channel motion with marketing and build pipeline together as a collective goal, as opposed to that counts outbound, this counts inbound, that counts for marketing, right? Which always inevitably happens when you start moving up the chain faster. Expectations grow, pipeline expectations hockey stick inevitably as you kind of move from series to series. So I need to make sure that we're all pulling in the same direction and it's not everyone kind of fighting for themselves. And I think that's always the challenge in this startup world when you're going really fast. What counts as what and for who, as opposed to how do we close business and move forward in the same direction collectively? How do we learn about the persona? How do we understand the ICP? And then how do we start moving into other markets in this kind of trial and error phase to make sure that we're moving in the same direction, but we're failing together as well?
I like that a lot. I was speaking to somebody from another company that she's working with, and I commented on her being in sales, and she's like, well, actually, I'm in marketing. I do lead gen. And I'm like, in my mind, they're all the same. Like, I don't care where you are in the organization. Every single person is in sales, but particularly marketing is still sales. It's all sales. And because that's the thing that the company needs above all. Every single customer touch point, the developers, they're in sales because ultimately what they build translates to customer satisfaction, translates to revenue. So that's a really nice approach that you have of making sure everybody's all on the same team, working towards the same goal, instead of establishing their little, flags in the ground and being like, this is mine, that's yours, you're not doing enough, or whatever.
That was lovely, Adrian. Now, Miguel, if a sales leader was about to step into their first global head of business development role, what's the one piece of advice you'd give them that you wish someone had told you earlier?
You will become a therapist more than you will be cold calling, emailing, or building messaging or value, right? And I say it very respectfully. I say it as, you think you move further away from knocking on doors and picking up phones, but you actually move so much closer to psychologically like the day-to-day grind of it, right? And I'm interviewing right now. We're growing the team in the UK and the US, and I try to be brutally honest. About 98% of people are going to tell you to take a long walk off a short pier. 98% of people are going to tell you to jump off a bridge. That's essentially what sales is at the core of it. So how do you manage that? And I would love to tell people to detach from it and do it. It's so difficult to do that, right? So I think for me, understanding if you're going to move into a leadership role in sales development, you're going to be operating with typically people that are in early sales career or transitioning from something else. You're going to be focusing on transferable skill sets that I consider you can't coach, right? I can't give you drive. I can't give you motivation. I can't make you curious. I can't make you solution oriented. I can't make you passionate and optimistic. I can't do those things, but I can make sure to have your back and support you. I can make sure that you have your T's crossed and your I's dotted. I'll go to war for whatever's going on, right? I need to make sure that you're held accountable and I'm held accountable. How do I unblock the road? How do I make you creative and all those things? I want to make sure you have incentive to speak up. If I'm not doing something right or you have a different thought, I'm not above the fray. I'm not smarter than anyone. You might have a different perspective. You might be coming from a different field. You have different life experiences, right? It's kind of this puzzle piece environment. So I would say if you're going to move into sales development, be prepared to really show empathy to the people that are working for you. And if you're not focusing on human first and you're focusing on a KPI of how many dials the person made every day, it's going to be a long, tough, brutal road and a lot of people are going to leave you. So the human first aspect of sales leadership, I think, is undermatched. And at the end of the day, we are not above a pat on the back. I don't care if you've been in sales for 2 seconds or 20 years. We all like a little recognition.
Well, Miguel, thank you so much for breaking this down, for coming on the show. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me, guys. I really appreciate it.
If any of you listening want to connect with Miguel and learn more about what they're doing at Orbital, we'll have a link in the description. Thank you for joining us for Are You Getting More? We'll see you next time.